Welcome, everybody, to episode 3 of The Pitch Perspective. I'm your host, Steven Ramirez, and as always, we're going to be talking lower league soccer. So let's go ahead and get it. So one of the things that I want to talk to you about first before we get into the content is we're going to be switching it up to Wednesdays. I kind of realized as I was watching matches and trying to take detailed notes and doing things like creating highlight reels like I'm going to show you today, it really requires a lot more time and, only having pretty much a day to do all that after the matches that happen on the weekend. It just made more sense to go ahead and do it on Wednesday. So, with that being said, I want to get into the, what we're going to be talking about. So what is building bridges? We're going to be talking about the coexistence, similar to what I talked about before, the coexistence of different soccer entities. What are their relationship like? What are the current trends that are happening? What does the future look like? And a bunch of other different issues that cause these entities not to have relationships, and what are solutions we can look at or ways that we can look at for these communities to start mixing together. And always we're going to go into right into our weekly highlights, so let's go ahead and get in there. All right, so one of the things I want to highlight this week is the USL. USL League 2 is back. I'm really excited because out here in Southwest, there's a lot of clubs that I'm familiar with, whether they have, a long-standing history, like SoCal Seahorses, or they're entering into the league for the first year, like Capo FC and Redlands FC. So it's very exciting for that to happen. And with USL League 2, with USL League 2 back, we had some great matches, which is, starting to lead to some thoughts about what matches I want to watch in the future. So some of the matches that I'm looking at is Louisiana Crew versus Little Rock Rangers. It's going to happen on the 20th. Louisiana Crew have a match under their belt, and they scored 11 goals. That ridiculous. They scored 11 goals, and they're going to come up against Little Rock Rangers, who, while have a short history in USL League 2, have always been a competitive side. And honestly, I kind of have to pick it because the next thing is I'll be, participating in USL League 2, the show, and that's host Ryan's team. So I guess I got to throw that in there too. So another match that I'm looking forward to is the battle of the first years out in the Southwest, Capo FC and Redlands FC. Then jumping over to MPLS City versus Bavarian, Milwaukee Bavarians. That's going to be a great matchup. MPLS City, they have done so many great things with creating their academy, their system of clubs within their academy that play each other. It's such a great way to do it. They're playing MLS Next as well, and then Bavarian have, of course, always had a competitive history. US Open Cup, USASA. There's so many different things that they've been competitive in, so this is going to be a great matchup. And then Ballard FC versus Lane United. These are just two clubs, while I don't know much about, I definitely like the branding, and that's something that, we need to take in consideration. Ballard FC being a new club, showing great, presence on social media, jerseys are looking fresh. And then there's Lane United. They have been doing it a little bit longer, and, I also have that great kit of the flannel. I think it's so unique. It's a polo kit, and when we review this game, I'll probably rock in that kit. So, and then lastly, like I said, I'm going to be participating in episodes of USL League 2, the show, every now and then, particularly when we're talking about lower league Southwest soccer. So make sure you like and subscribe the show over there. It's just on Protagonist Podcasts, but there's so many great shows anyway, so make sure you like and subscribe there. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the main topics. So, what's building bridges? The main concept of building bridges is thinking about the coexistence of clubs, professional clubs to amateur clubs, specifically that participate in the same region. Um, and we want to look at it in a couple different aspects. We want to look at it as a form of competition, and that's on the field, of course. We want to see how they are marketing within each other, how they are helping each other as far as like attendance and tickets and all of that, as well as looking at the outside friendlies that are going to be happening and what type of community service events that can happen in combination of the two to really create a presence on both the amateur side and the pro side. So starting out with the competition side, it's important to have friendlies between pro and amateur clubs, because while we have competitions like the Open Cup and we have competitions like the NISA Independent Cup, there isn't a lot of outside opportunity to get your players showcased, to get your team and brand showcased. Now, some of that current trend is changing. For example, out here in the Southwest, Temecula FC has played Albion San Diego when they were, going pro. They've had experience playing San Diego, and there's other clubs that have had, similar experiences down here with, facing different opposition and friendlies. Now, like I said, that's important for that pedestal that you're going to be putting your players on. But it also allows lower league clubs to find, new fans. And I think, pro clubs might be scared of that, but it's really like fans are always going to want to go to the highest tier of soccer. And while there might be a select few that are specifically dedicated to a certain amateur team, right here, not everyone's going to want to be like that. So having an option separate of their main team gives them another opportunity to support soccer in the community. So it's really important to start having those, competitions, because you can have a nice little derby. And then when there's matches on the weekend for the pro club, they're getting great attendance. And when they're not playing, they're getting fans are getting an opportunity to watch another club in their community. Also, now that leads to marketing. How do these clubs promote each other outside of playing on the pitch? A couple of things that, we can look at is promoting the matches that happen. Now, a lot of these, friendlies that happen are typically closed door friendlies, and there's not a lot of coverage at it whatsoever. And while that could be understanding, I feel like even doing like a Twitter thread that doesn't really involve tactics, but more involves like actions that are happening, a glimpse at like players who may be just playing in trial lists and lineups, things like that, that's going to help. And when you are getting the opportunity to sign a player from an amateur squad to a pro squad, having some recognition from the pro squad about, where this club played amateur soccer, where they played academy soccer, it's just really going to tie in the whole community, because it takes all these little steps to develop that player. And you want to make sure that you can promote that to the greater audience in the community. If you don't promote that, you end up just disconnecting the other soccer, entities. And this is about building bridges and about the coexistence, right? So we need to make sure that we acknowledge these other people and other entities outside of the pro. And we want to make sure that there's off the field partnerships happening. If you're in the same region, community service is huge, and clubs will want to participate in that because it's a way to gain fans. And, currently pro clubs will participate in their own events that they host, and they'll do their own series of, like, let's say, hospital visits or various, good deeds in community service. Amateur clubs will do similar things, and there's really no work in between. And if we want to show unity and build the bridges, within our community, doing those things together would actually be beneficial for both, because much like playing each other and exposing each other through competition, you're now exposing each other through, community service and gaining a following based on your ethos and what the club stands for, not just for what's going on the pitch. Now, while we look at all those different ways or paths of coexistence, there's also negative effects throughout U.S. soccer. Cycling of this selfish actions from, let's say, academies withholding players, with pro clubs, taking over stadiums, like Los Angeles Galaxy buying Championship Stadium to have LA Galaxy 2 there, when clubs like Orange County FC Orange County SC have made their home there. You have those types of things that just don't really show any unity, and it's really just bullying, claiming like territory. So that selfish decision doesn't really help anyone like whatsoever. It doesn't really benefit anyone, because even if LA Galaxy 2 were going to move in, like, no one is going to want to watch that. And we're about to have that tested again with MLS. Rumors are swirling that they're going to have another squad launching, and that it'll be in San Diego. I personally think San Diego has created a great fan base, a passionate fan base, a loyal fan base, and they've started to build something beautiful out there. And I think even if MLS moves in, I don't think you're going to see a situation where they would give up. I would hope that they would still exist. I would hope that they would still continue to grow and work on their youth game, and, creating strong players like Nick Moon and Damus and Moshoban. There's so many, talented players within that squad, and I would like to see, those players grow. Now, part of that, selfish decision is, specifically at an academy level, everything is about winning. If you can be a winning squad, you can promote your academy as winning X amount of trophies, and therefore you are better, right? Like, therefore the experience of going to this academy is better because they have X coach, typically foreign coaches, because, we're not considered a soccer nation. So, while I may be speculating, people tend to hear accents and think that they understand soccer better because it's like they call it football. And that's obviously not the case. But when you have a winning squad, you have a foreign coach with foreign credentials, you're allowed to sell that idea of winning, which comes at a cost of progress. Because at that age, we all know, the leading like tactic is really just using speed to get ahead of the game. And while at the highest levels of the youth game, like the youth national team, some of the play is a little bit more intricate. That quick paced, play, taking advantage of young players is very, common. So when you're selling that, you're not focusing on development. You're not focusing on players who aren't super fast. And let's say you have a really fast player, you put him at striker so he can run behind. But what if you're missing a talented left back who can play both, box to box, and he can get into the wing and actually shoot and score from a distance. And you might be limiting that person just because you're sticking to this tactic. And that's, shows all over the pitch. What about a slow player who, is more of a target striker and strong for his age and can hold on to players rather than being a center back, or the tallest kid playing goalkeeper? This should not this isn't how we should define how we play in our academies, and we shouldn't use that to help dictate how we play, all because we want to win. It should always be about development, and it should always be about learning and growing, and that is what should help consider the different academies. And you should be able to feel comfortable as a parent and as a player in an academy, knowing that you are learning and it's going to set you up for a brighter future. So we've kind of hinted at it already, but other than the Open Cup and the various levels of the pyramid, I want to say like pyramid, there's, minimal relationships that we talked about. So the things that we need to see up front is player announcements. We need to see match details. If it's behind closed doors, like I said, at least, say what the score is, maybe who scored, the lineup. At least you can see that. So that way you can at least get some sort of hype, built up around these opportunities to play professional clubs. And of course, the mutual community service. Now, while there is a difference between the professional model and the amateur model, they can still treat each other as equals regardless of what league they're in. And that is like support. If you can have players from the pro go and checking out some of the younger players or people within the amateur squad, that amateur squad going and checking out what's going on. I think a good example is the team that we're going to be talking about today. So Oakland Roots have, of course, Project 510, and of course they're in the same banner, but you're going to have fans from Oakland Roots that go watch Project 510. And that's already been shown just in this matchup, in this first matchup. You're also going to then have players from that team that are come check out the younger team. That younger team's going to go then practice and watch the, first team play, and that in itself is going to build a relationship. So we need to open that up from not organizations that have a first, second, and third team, but a team that, let's say, is, LAFC, and then LAFC has a relationship with, let's just say, Orange County, and then Orange County has a relationship with Capo FC, and Capo FC has a relationship, so on and so forth, all the way down. And you don't have to have one entity who controls all of that and forces others out. You can really set up your own hierarchy, and, rising tides lift all boats, right? So helping each other out in that aspect and still having a hierarchy allows everyone to grow with each other at the same rate, making sure that hierarchy stays the same. Now, another aspect of the academy game is the players. And we've talked, about player availability before, but one of those barriers, of course, is the academies and how they have to represent their winning ways on top of their coaches, but the alumni that they've created. And if you go to any, promising academy or any known academy, one of the things they're going to have listed on the main page is going to be alumni, because that's, important to sell. We won these trophies. These are our coaches, and we've created these players. And if they have to give those players up to amateur clubs, they can no longer claim that they're theirs. So this is where you have, clubs from the top, like I just said, creating every, aspect of a second team, a third team into an academy, and you have academies creating amateur clubs into pro clubs all the way up, right? Now, while that may be beneficial, or to each of those entities, it just sucks out the whole market, because now player MLS or the top professional clubs aren't going to want to have their players from any other entity. They want it from where they control it, and the same is always going to go, or it's always going to go that way. So we need to make sure that the lower leagues are represented, and that way they have skin in the game in this community. Now, if we talk about that hierarchy, that would help alleviate some of these issues of player retention, because academy can still have alumni and say that they, developed these players, and for them, they're going to have majority of the development. So it's not like someone else is going to take credit. It's not like if someone is playing at, let's say, the Arsenal Academy that we have out here in SoCal. And a lot of these references are going to be SoCal, obviously. But let's say we have an Arsenal Academy out here, and they let that player go to previously mentioned AS Los Angeles. They're going to have way more time invested than AS Los Angeles if that person gets, like, let's say, a NISA contract. You're talking about, let's say, a 10-year process to like a 2-year process. So you are still, as an academy, the main factor as this person's development. It's really just getting experience as they grow through the levels. And that's how you can represent every piece, or every level in your community. Academies use all of these things to brand success, and they exclude these lower league clubs. This hierarchy that we've talked about, or that I've mentioned, that also goes with costs. One of the biggest things that's complained about in the U.S. soccer system is how much it costs to actually have your kids play in the academy, and also how much experience and playtime they get out of that, because of the amount of travel and everything like that. If you have more specific levels and you're allowing for more clubs within the area, not like controlling the territory, you're going to have more competition to grow in. That's more time for, academy kids to be playing on the pitch, and costs throughout the level are going to go down, making it accessible for different players within the community. And I want to specifically talk about the cost when it comes to running an amateur club, because of course academies are expensive, to run, but that's because of things that they do with like field rentals and, sponsorships and, equipment and everything, paying people to run it. Everything that encompasses that is expensive. But if we look at this hierarchy and we get to the amateur club, those costs can be split up from going to a regional league, going into a national league like UPSL, going to like a NISA Nation and MPSL, all the way up to, let's say, a championship. At each of those steps, it's going to be a lower cost, allowing these clubs to grow over time, and really driving costs down for other entities to do similar things. This is also going to help with that player availability. Some leagues are going to be summer leagues. Some leagues are going to be full year round. So you need that to help with player availability to get similar players year after year, to build up those stories around these players. Let's say, for example, having a summer league is good for the college players who are returning for the summer to play in a league. Getting those same players over and over while they're in their college career, or creating relationships with the colleges that they play at, you can start to build narratives around those players for your fans. When it comes to the amateur clubs or the clubs that run year round, finding players that can stick around, that create a name or become club legends. You can talk about that history within your club. And another example of, let's say, that is my home, my old club, the Riverside Quadas. Going there, we had repeat players all the time that you got to see. Alonso Alara, and he was there. We had Eric Gonzalez, Hugo Perez, and and Shane Shelton, who eventually became the coach. It's Hugo Gutierrez, actually, and Shane Shelton, who became the coach. These are things and narratives that you can build around, and fans can cling to and relate to, because they see these players from their area and they've seen them go year after year, from center defensive midfield captain to coaching the club. So it's really important that we open up and build those bridges, because that's going to help that availability, regardless of what league or timing of play is going to be. So let's talk about some potential solutions, right? We can't just complain about what's going on. I think it's important to have more interleague competition, more independent cup style tournaments, more open cup style tournaments, finding partnerships with European clubs or South American clubs that might be, or Liga MX clubs that might be bringing reserves down to the States and trying to find ways to play play those squads. We've already talked about, the friendlies between local rivals. That's also another thing. And continuing to promote those. What about solutions to player availability? Clubs can start to create a higher player standard and start to reward them with their platform for those, for marketing their own skills. And a part of that is going through the ranks of, or the hierarchy, the pyramid of these, leagues and steps in a player's career. Is each step that you're making, you're setting a new bar for yourself. And every time you are starting to exceed that bar, you're being rewarded with that promotion, and you're continuing to build towards that. You get to then have entities within that hierarchy start to create partnerships with different academies. Those talented academy players grow within the academy system, grow within the amateur, grow into the pro system. And that gives everyone an opportunity to grow. And I think I've said that like so many times already. But, it's just important to specify it's local players growing over time, because that's what's important. You can't just flip a switch on and all of a sudden be ready for the pros. Maybe Messi could, right? Or did. And also, we want to make sure that talent grows within these bridges and within these partnerships. If you are getting different development, you're being exposed to different levels of play, different styles of coaching. You're gaining, all this experience because you are playing within these different systems. And at times when you can play in the same system, you're learning the same style of play over and over each year, most likely from the same coaches, until you get out of the academy into different aspects. But typically there is a style of play that academies and giant clubs, want to expose their players to and have them play. So growing that is going to help just the experience and the strength of the player pool and the community. And having that open system gives more players an opportunity to play at different levels. It gives them a chance to grow, create, and build their skills. One of the things that we've talked about as well with that interview with Mark Ford and UniFC was that idea of the try-in. And that stands out as a good example because you can have players who may not be ready, but having them come out, having them practice with the amateur side, you may create a passionate fan. You could create a ref. You could create coaches, but you can also create a player whose desire has paid off into playing time and a potential career, because there are many players who may not have been the most talented, but they have the strongest fight, the most desire, and the most will to get to the level that they needed to be. I would definitely love to, further this conversation. I think it's something to talk about. There is current trends, of those things changing. I think a big part of that is the existence of NISA and NISA Nation, because a lot of the clubs that are in NISA Nation or had a short stint in NISA Nation were all clubs that, for the most part, existed outside of the pro system and were able to gain a following and a fan base, nationally and within their community. So having those competitions set up by NISA to have pro clubs face amateur clubs, I think struck a match. And then of course the Open Cup, because every year there's upsets, matches are getting closer, Sacramento making it to the finals. There's all these instances where lower league soccer is getting highlights. So those are good trends, and it bodes well for the future, because the more people know about different lower league sides, the more our history is discovered by the common fan about how long this game's been going on, and the great clubs that have lasted forever, like the Bavarians. They would get an appreciation for amateur soccer as well. With that being said, I want to go ahead and hit up the match reviews, check out the scores. We're going to be looking at two different matches. We're going to be looking at Project 510. We're going to be looking at Georgia Storm, Project 510 versus Davis Legacy, Georgia Storm versus Appalachian FC. So let's go. All right, so let's go ahead and go into our first match review of episode 3 here. We're going to be talking about Georgia Storm versus Appalachian FC, MPSL matchup. We'll go ahead. I have some highlights that we're going to be looking at. We'll kind of talk about some of the general things that happened within the match. And of course, you'll be able to see that in most of the goals that we'll be showing in these matches. I'll also give some extra context that happened throughout the match. And after, we'll be going into more detail. I'll be posting, my weekly match reviews over on Protagonist Soccer. So go ahead and check out those over there as well, just to get a little bit more details about tactics, about how some of these teams played. So let's go ahead and queue up these goals here in this first matchup. All right, so we're starting out in the first match here. We got Georgia Storm lining up for this corner here. One of the things, and I'm going to stop it, I'll probably stop it a few times. Georgia Storm, very strong on the counterattack, very strong defensively. They played like this 3-4-1-2 formation, this 5-3-1-2, and really didn't use the width for the attack purpose of getting into like the Appalachian half. They more used it to force Appalachian into the middle where they were congested, and they can, force them into passing into traps, allowing for Georgia then to break out into the counter. So here we go. We got the first goal here coming off the corner. Quick deflection. You can see, multiple headers. This was a scratchy scrappy matchup. Then we got Harris Osambasik, who settles it in, runs to his corner, definitely wants to show it. Here we go into the 55th minute. We're going to be going into Appalachian's goal. I'm going to go ahead and pause it here. What you won't see here is how well Appalachian possessed the ball. They played very well. They looked like a team who gelled, was already had like built up all this chemistry. A team that had been playing with each other for a long time because they passed well. They maintained possession, even though they were getting pressured by Georgia Storm a lot. They still were calm on the ball, were able to play out of pressure sometimes. Now, while they did get pushed inwards, they were at times able to break out of that position, but it often caused a lot of movement, creating a lot of space, which then if there was a turnover, they were susceptible to the counterattack. That was definitely something that happened throughout the match. While it only finished 1-1, it definitely showed from Appalachian that they couldn't necessarily handle the counter. And on the same note, Georgia Storm had issues dealing with possession. So it was like this competing styles against each other. And they both seem to not be able to handle those things. So let's go ahead and take a look at Appalachian's goal here in the 57th minute. So number 11, I tried to look up names and everything like this. He was all over the pitch like this the entire time. He passed very well. He dribbled out of pressure. His vision was really good. One of the things I saw him do a lot was really just make the right decision, whether it was trying to steal the ball and darting forward. There was also a moment where pretty much like 8 midfielders and defenders together were creating like this line in front of him. And while he did have attackers ahead, he really decided to turn around, look at both different options, and instead of going to the wing, deciding to pass back. And I thought that was special at this level because he looked like he had options, like he could have passed to the attacking option. And I think because of the space that the attacking options had, a lot of players would have done that, but wouldn't have been the wrong decision, or would have been the right decision. So creating moments like that is huge. And now that we see in this play that he darts down the field, creates a turnover, breaks the first center back, dodges the goalkeeper, who then tackles him, gets a yellow card, drawing a penalty. And we're going to go ahead and see the captain for Appalachian seal this one in. Perfect. Nice low to the ground. Powered in. Max Landau, captain, Appalachian FC. So, in the second half, they really battled back for that second goal. I was really impressed by Appalachian just because of how well they gelled together, how competent they looked when they were playing with each other. I think this is definitely a team to look forward to. Obviously, they've had success in their young age, both on the field and off the field. With just everything they've done, from the marketing, the branding, creating a community club, getting the squatchiness up in there. It just goes to show that they are on the right path moving forward. And as far as Georgia Storm, very competitive side. I think once that counterattack clicks, their strategy of how they want to play defensively against teams, because the playing wide is going to be a very popular tactic within USL League 2, as it is with other amateur sides, that you're going to have a team who's set up to combat that. So as they get more opportunities on the pitch, you're going to see that come out within their play. Overall, great match. MPSL put on a good match. The broadcast was phenomenal. They went back and just created a great product with putting the time uh, clicker, I guess, on there, or the ticker. They put the time up on there with the goals. So just an overall great production. And now I want to talk about Project 510, Davis Legacy, USL League 2. Like I said, I'm so excited to have USL League 2. It's a league that I want to try and follow. And boy, did I pick the first game. You have Project 510 who wins this one 6-2. I mean, it was a slobber knocker. It was definitely something. Let's go ahead and check out some of these goals between these young sides. So here we go. This is an early goal in the 7th minute. Play was very erratic, as you can see. I mean, it had gone all the way up like this till the 7th minute. Very physical, just endless cycles of interceptions, circling the ball in. I almost said Oakland, but Project 510 definitely favored that right side, taking advantage of just, everything going on. Escar Cruz sealing it away. It wouldn't be his last either. Now we're going to be looking at about the 27th minute. As you can see, that the tables have kind of turned on how the players are playing, moving around, not necessarily covering a lot. Nathaniel Carrasco is able to find space, settle it in for a goal, 1-1 in the 27th-ish minute. Later on in the match, you can see that they have this patience to them, but are able to find the open spaces, look for the goal across the pitch. Serafin Alberto sealing it away. And this was, I think, a crucial thing to see in this match, because there was that endless cycle of being intercepted, launching the counter, being intercepted, launching the counter. And it never really worked in the first half. The teams, unlike watching the MPSL matches, the teams didn't look like they had grown together, had the chemistry, were ready to play in this first match. So you got to see energy and physicality dominate rather than solid gameplay tactics in the first half. I mean, it was really scrappy, and I feel kind of bad in speaking about it in that way, but I mean, that's what it is. And the tides turned in the second half, and you're going to go ahead and see it now, because like I said, it was a 6-2 goal fest, and it ended in the half 1-2 in favor of Davis Legacy. So let's go ahead and watch these goal highlights here. All right, now the second half, complete different story, at least for one club. Project 510 went off in this one, scoring 5 goals to come back to a 6-2. The big thing that needs to be highlighted with Project 510 is their persistence. Now, this is a team that at every single moment in the second half scrapped for every single ball. They were a smaller team. If they got knocked down, they got up immediately and stole the ball back. If they missed the goal, they continued to fight until they scored. Persistent was great. It's like persistent hard work. It wasn't necessarily the talent or the skill that won it. It was just that hard work that made it happen. So let's go ahead. 5 goals in the second half. Let's go ahead and take a look here. We got a long ball here. Davis, as you can tell, just wasn't able to really figure the match out in the second half. Horrible mistake. Saul Tekle finds the errant ball and scores it. Once again, we're in the 62nd minute, 2 minutes later. Bouncing off, just creating an option. Escar Cruz, his second goal in the game. And this is where persistence over and over again. Here we go. It is now 3-2. back post, catch him sleeping. This is the moment you can see Davis' legacy just, die down. What's going on? 90th minute, not even paying attention, just pass the ball through, let him go. It's the second goal in the 90th minute. Luis Saldana. And here we go again. It's still the 90th minute. And what? Can we see a third? Yes, we can. Davis' legacy was just not ready for the second half. And when that third goal came in, when that go-ahead goal, the third one came in, they just couldn't handle it. There's nothing they can really do. And it was all 5-1-0. So where do these clubs go from here? Obviously, from the first match, 5-0 look bright. They look young. It took them a half to figure some things out, but they looked good. And they looked like they can go on because they have that persistence and they have like infinite amount of energy. I mean, they just go on for days. Now, Davis' legacy, on the other hand, it's hard to really tell because they do have size going for them. They're also what looks to be a younger squad, so they can play physically. They tried to play with possession, with keeping the ball on the ground, but I just don't think they were up for this game, with it being the first and with it being against a club like 5-0 who are just madmen running everywhere, infinite energy, running one player to the other, always double teaming them, just taking away all space because they're so fast and they're so persistent. So we'll see what happens to Davis' legacy, but my power rankings would put them down and Project 5-0 above average. So thanks again, honestly, showing up. Those are my match reviews. Make sure that you check them out on Protagonist Soccer. I'll be tweeting them out. Once again, this is going to be happening on on Wednesdays. That way it just gives me some more time. I planned on watching Stockton Cargo versus Oakland Soul. Unfortunately, due to weather conditions, they canceled the stream, so I wasn't able to watch it. But I want to make sure that I'm doing women's matches and I'm doing men's matches. So there's going to be soccer for all. So just go ahead and tune in and let's go ahead and build those bridges. Take it easy.